Just a social worker podcast where we seek to celebrate social workers with host Lori Eldred, a licensed clinical social worker in Michigan. In Michigan.
Welcome to Just a Social Worker podcast with Lori Eldred. I'm coming to you today to discuss our current political events, even our political action as a social worker. So I love to use ChatGPT, so I threw this question into ChatGPT and here's what they told me. ChatGPT came up with eight, if I can get all my fingers correct, 8 ideas, thoughts, reflections for social workers to think about in terms of getting politically active and even why we should get politically active. I would be remiss if I didn't come on now and talk about all the political issues happening that are really impacting us as social workers. So I'm going to go through every one of the things that ChatGPT told me, probably add to them, do a little rating, give it some feedback. Maybe we need to tweak what ChatGPT is telling us as an AI program. So first on their list is advocate for clients and communities. So ChatGPT says we need to address systemic causes of poverty, discrimination, and inequality, go beyond just our individual interventions to push for long-term change. I would say that's probably pretty close. Maybe give that a 7, 8 out of 10. Second, advocate for social justice. Of course, our core code of ethics that NASW has continuously updated and tweaked and refined over the years has social justice as one of our fundamental and core values for our profession. It also calls us to challenge inequalities in race, gender, class, disability, and more. I might give that an 8 out of 10. Good job, ChatGPT. 3, policy shapes practice. So laws determine funding, service access, and practice standards. Our laws set what we can do and cannot do as social workers, but they also look at funding. That is one of the fundamental kind of functions of the government. If we go back to our government class from high school, laws determine, that's what Congress is there. Is to collect taxes as well as to determine what to do with those taxes. That's why we elect representatives either every 2 years or every 4 in the case of the Senate or the presidential elections. So those folks often with the loudest voices get the most funding, or at least those with the most money in their pockets get more and more funding. And even tax cuts, I would say, is a form of funding and something the government is able to do. So engagement also ensures policy support effective practice, right? If we're looking at some of the tax cuts that are happening with billionaires, then that money is not the tax money generated from taxing those who are wealthier. The money from that goes to fund programs. But if we give them tax breaks, there's less money to fund programs. And the folks getting impacted the most are going to be those people who need access to healthcare, mental health care, legal support, education. So we have to think very carefully in terms of who we elect, as well as our continuing relationship with our elected person. So I would probably give that another 8 out of 10. This is the big one. I would say this is probably higher on my list. Number 4 is protecting the profession. So political action influences funding, licensing, and working conditions. It strengthens the visibility and sustainability of social work. So again, we want to protect our profession. I would say this would probably be, for me, up with advocating for clients and communities and advancing social justice. We need to be paid well, lower caseloads. We need to have healthy working conditions, good health care, good PTO, and as well as very in-depth across the board support for mitigating secondary traumatic stress. So I would say that is probably an 9 out of 10. Number 5 is amplifying marginalized voices. Clients often lack political power. I think most of us know this to be true. And social workers bring lived experiences to policymakers. I would say that lived experience isn't just what we witness when we are with our clients and working with our clients. I would also say it's our own particular lived experience. Many of us in the social work profession got into social work probably because we had a social worker at some point in time in our lives. And so we probably were struggling maybe with something. And so I would say most of us also have a lived experience, a personal lived experience that we can also interweave with our professional as we talk to lawmakers. And we should be talking to lawmakers. We should be letting them know what we believe, advocating for marginalized communities, advocating for effective policies. We should be doing these things, even if we're just working with clients one-on-one. It doesn't take a lot of time to go to a protest, write, call, use our relationship building skills with policymakers so that they know us. And when we call or we stop by or we ask, to meet for coffee or we go to community events, they know that we're coming in with this particular lens. So that is what I would add for that, especially in amplifying marginalized voices as social workers. I would give this probably maybe a 5 out of 10, their number 5 thing. But also we have tremendous privilege because most of us are white females and we have a lot of privilege coming into this profession. And so we need to use that privilege to amplify voices that don't ordinarily get heard. Number 6, focus on prevention. I think that goes without saying. If we focus more on prevention, we probably would not have the significant amount of violence, mental health issues, gun violence, and all of the things that are impacting our communities and societies now, because policies can reduce crisis, and lots of us are very familiar with jumping from crisis to crisis. Before they occur. So things like housing and healthcare, being involved in the justice system, education, right? Where are we putting our money? That is always my biggest question. Where are we putting money in order to use, and how is that money being used in our communities to help those who are most vulnerable? Or is it going back into businesses? And I think we probably have enough data to show that, yes, putting money back into a business so that they can hire and grow and collect taxes and have a service or something, but also we need to be putting money into more prevention. So political change equals long-term solution versus temporary fixes. I think now we're just kind of really reaping some of the temporary fixes that we're seeing, especially when it comes right now, budgets. The federal and the state budget doesn't look like it's going to be probably passed. We might be going into budget shutdowns, both in the state of Michigan and the federal government due to their hard deadline of September 30th. And this podcast comes to you at the end of September. So I will be curious what it looks like in October. And so I would say this is probably maybe like 7 out of 10. And they're number 6. Number 7, fulfill ethical responsibilities. We have an ethical responsibility as a social worker to uphold dignity, justice, relationships, and integrity. It's part of our code of ethics. And silence reinforces harmful systems. Silence reinforces harmful systems. And so I would say that probably is an 8 out of 10. And then number 8, collective impact. Social workers are a pretty large informed workforce. I wish we could have a union to have collective impact because I think that would make our profession even better. United action can shape legislation in child welfare, mental health, healthcare, and justice reform. I think that's also very true. So I'd probably give that a 9 out of 10. But ChatGPT ends says, bottom line, political action is not optional for social workers. So let me say that again. Political action is not optional for social workers. It's essential to advocate for justice, protect clients, and shape systems that impact everyday lives. I would say that political action can be so many different things. It doesn't have to be protesting, but it could be going to coffee meetings with your local legislator, going to board meetings, writing letters, writing postcards, talking to people, maybe having a book club or other gathering. calling your legislator, writing them emails, right? Letting, just using our skills to let them know we're here, we're not leaving, we're not going. These are the things that are important for us. I know I've gone to town halls speaking up and letting legislators know, like, this is not what I think is most important for my community, or I'm seeing this thing in our community. What are we going to do about this? Right? Because the money that legislators get is our tax money, and we elect these individuals, and probably this seems very pie in the sky, but we elect these individuals in order to best represent our needs. And it seems like too many people are getting elected, number one, by very small groups of people, and that is the agenda that is being set. And we can have hard conversations with legislators. We don't have to agree with them. We can hold some accountability of saying, like, this is what I feel is important. How can I help you? Because legislators want to be successful. They want to keep their job. So maybe we have conversations about, how can I help you keep your job? How can I help you be successful, while also trying to meet the needs of individuals in our community who are marginalized, who are being left out, who are not being, who don't have access to resources that they desperately need. Because we all of us live in a community. And so the more we can make our communities healthier, the better, not just the outcomes for our clients, but also for us, because we are not, I will say this again a second time, we are not disconnected from our fellow person. We are social beings that need to have relationship and connection. And it is very, very understandable that we get distressed when we see other people in distress. That's kind of how we're biologically hardwired. So all in all, I think ChatGPT did a good job, probably hitting most of the points that I would have made a point to talk about when we think about social workers being politically active. And I know that there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of fear. I listen to it on the podcast and the other, articles that I read. But also, if we do not speak out, we risk complicity in a very harmful system right now. And that's just something I don't want to do. Thank you for listening to Just a Social Worker podcast with Lori Eldred. I appreciate that you took the time out to hear me. If you're a fan of the show, please go in and 5-star review me, write me a review, let me know what you're thinking. You can send me DMs. I do now have an Instagram for the podcast, Just a Social Worker Podcast, which I'll be posting clips and letting you know when new episodes are coming out. You can check out my website, www.justasocialworker.com, where you can look at maybe joining me for supervision or consultation. I also have a small store where I sell stickers and badge reels and self-care stuff for social workers. So I would love to have you support me if you're really a fan of what I'm doing. I would love to hear from you. And so hope you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Just a Social Worker podcast with your host, Lori Eldred, LMSWC. All information in this show is not a substitute for therapy and is only intended for entertainment only. Should you need help, please reach out to 988 or your local mental health resource.